I thought the blizzard was the thing that would break me. I never expected the silent stranger who stopped beside me to become the person who changed the way I saw my entire life. My name is Ethan Brooks, and before that night, I believed I could handle anything on my own. I was the kind of person who kept moving no matter how tired I felt. I worked hard, stayed independent, and rarely asked anyone for help. I told myself that needing support was something I could avoid if I simply stayed strong enough. That belief followed me everywhere, even during the long drive home after a photography assignment in Montana. I had spent several days capturing winter landscapes for a small project, and I was ready to return to my apartment in Colorado. The forecast warned about heavy snow, but I thought I could make it through before the storm became serious. I had driven through bad weather before, and I trusted myself. But the mountains had a way of reminding people that plans do not always go the way they expect. As the snow became heavier, visibility dropped, and the road ahead became harder to follow. I slowed down, focused on staying calm, and searched for a safe place to stop. That was when my car finally gave me a problem I could not ignore. I pulled over near an empty stretch of road surrounded by snow-covered trees. The temperature outside was dropping, and my phone showed no signal. For the first time in a long while, I felt completely disconnected from the world around me. I sat there wondering what I was going to do next when a pair of headlights appeared through the snow. A large truck slowly approached and stopped nearby. The driver stepped out, wearing a heavy winter jacket, and walked toward my car. He did not panic. He did not ask unnecessary questions. He simply looked at the situation, nodded, and offered to help. His name was Cole Anderson. He was a long-haul trucker traveling through the area, and from the moment I met him, I noticed something unusual. He was quiet, not unfriendly, not cold, just quiet. Most people would have filled the silence with conversation, but Cole seemed comfortable letting the silence exist. At first, I wondered if he was just naturally distant, but then I noticed the small things. He checked that I had everything I needed. He made sure I was comfortable while we waited for the weather to improve. He paid attention without making a big deal about it. It was strange because I had expected a stranger in the middle of a storm to feel intimidating. Instead, Cole made the situation feel calmer. We waited inside his truck while the snow continued outside. I tried starting a conversation, but most of my questions received short answers. Where was he headed? How long had he been driving? Did he always take this route? Cole answered politely, but he never said more than necessary. I could not understand him. He was clearly willing to help, yet he kept a careful distance. As the hours passed, I started realizing something. The man who barely spoke was paying attention to everything. He noticed when I was worried. He noticed when I needed a moment to think. He noticed things most people would have missed. I did not know it yet, but the silent trucker sitting across from me was carrying a story of his own. And before that storm ended, I would discover that the person who seemed the hardest to understand would become the person who understood me the most. The morning after the unexpected meeting, I woke up before the alarm rang, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling and trying to understand how my carefully protected life had become connected to his again. For 5 years, I had built every corner of my world around stability. The small bakery, the quiet streets of Havenwood, and the 2 little lives that depended on me were the proof that I had survived everything that came before. But seeing Nathan Lancel standing in front of me again had opened a door I had spent years keeping locked. He still carried the same calm presence that once made an entire room fall silent, but something about him felt different now. The confidence was still there, yet beneath it was a question he could not hide. He wanted to know the truth. I wanted to tell him everything, but fear held my words back. I remembered the years when I had faced every difficult moment alone. I remembered holding my twins for the first time, promising them that no matter what happened, they would always feel loved and protected. They were not a secret because I was ashamed of them. They were a secret because I was afraid of losing the only family I had ever built. When I arrived at the bakery that morning, the familiar scent of fresh bread and coffee welcomed me like an old friend. The twins were already there, laughing as they helped arrange pastries on the counter. Their happiness was simple and honest, untouched by the complicated history between their father and me. Then the bell above the door rang. Nathan walked in. For a moment, everything around me became quiet. He looked at the children, and they looked back at him with the same curiosity they had shown the day before. The resemblance was impossible to ignore, and I saw the realization slowly forming in his eyes. He did not say anything immediately. Instead, he approached the counter and placed his usual coffee order, almost as if he needed a moment to understand what he was feeling. I watched him carefully, searching for the cold businessman I remembered, but I saw something else. I saw a man trying to connect pieces of a missing chapter in his own life. Later that afternoon, when the bakery became peaceful, Nathan finally asked the question he had been carrying. He asked why I disappeared. He asked why I never told him about the children. His voice was quiet, not angry. That made it harder. I explained that I had been young, uncertain, and overwhelmed. I told him I had chosen a life where my children would never feel like they were part of a battle between adults. Nathan listened without interrupting. For the first time, the powerful CEO who seemed impossible to reach looked vulnerable. He looked at the twins playing near the window and whispered that he had missed years he could never get back. I did not know what would happen next. Trust could not be rebuilt in one conversation. But as the evening sunlight filled the bakery, I realized something important. The past had finally stopped chasing us. Now, we had the chance to decide what the future would become. The days that followed were filled with quiet changes that I never expected. Nathan did not try to force his way into our lives. He did not arrive with grand promises or demands. Instead, he started with small things. He came to the bakery in the morning, sat at the same corner table, and slowly became part of the familiar rhythm that had always existed there. The twins noticed him first. Children had a way of seeing beyond titles, money, and reputation. To them, Nathan was not the powerful CEO whose name appeared in business magazines. He was simply the tall man who remembered how they liked their hot chocolate and who listened carefully when they explained their newest drawings. Watching him with them created a strange feeling inside me. For years, I had imagined many different versions of this moment. I had imagined anger, disappointment, and endless questions. I had prepared myself for a storm. Instead, I found someone quietly trying to understand what he had missed. Nathan began learning the small details of our life. He learned that one twin loved building small models from wooden pieces while the other preferred painting colorful pictures of imaginary worlds. He learned that Saturday mornings were reserved for pancakes, that rainy afternoons meant story time near the bakery window, and that both children believed every customer deserved a smile. These ordinary moments seemed to affect him more than any business achievement ever had. One evening, after the bakery closed, Nathan stayed behind to help clean the tables. It was something I never imagined seeing. The man who once lived surrounded by luxury and assistance was now carefully arranging chairs and wiping flour from the counter. He looked almost peaceful. I asked him why he was doing this, and he simply said he wanted to understand the life he had not been there to witness. His answer stayed with me long after he left. I realized that rebuilding trust would not happen through words alone. It would happen through consistency, patience, and time. However, not everyone understood the changes happening around us. Some people in Havenwood recognized Nathan and wondered why someone like him spent so much time at a small neighborhood bakery. I worried that our peaceful life would become complicated again. I worried that the world he came from would eventually pull him away from us. Nathan seemed to notice my hesitation. One afternoon, while the twins played outside under the summer sun, he told me that success had given him everything except the one thing he truly wanted: a place where he belonged. He admitted that he had spent years believing control was the same as happiness, but meeting us showed him the difference. For the first time, I saw Nathan not as the person from my past, but as someone standing beside me in the present. The future was still uncertain. There were still many unanswered questions between us. But as we watched the twins laugh together, I felt a small sense of hope returning. Maybe some broken chapters were not meant to be erased. Maybe they were meant to be rewritten with patience, understanding, and a second chance. The arrival of autumn brought a new rhythm to our small town. The bakery became busier as the leaves changed color and visitors came in for warm drinks and fresh pastries. Life felt almost normal, but inside me there was still a quiet uncertainty. Nathan had become a familiar presence, yet a part of me was still waiting for the moment when everything would change. I had spent years protecting the peaceful world I created with the twins, and allowing someone new into that world required courage I was still learning to find. Nathan seemed to understand that. He never rushed me. He never asked me to forget the past. Instead, he showed me through his actions that he wanted to become part of our future. He started making time away from his company to be present in the simple moments that mattered. He attended the twin school events, learned their favorite games, and listened to their endless stories with genuine attention. The children slowly began to trust him, and that trust meant more to him than any business achievement. One afternoon, Nathan surprised us by bringing a small wooden bookshelf he had built himself. It was not perfect. The edges were uneven, and the paint was slightly different in some places, but the twins loved it immediately. They filled it with their favorite books and drawings. I watched Nathan smile as they proudly showed him every single item they placed inside. That moment revealed something I had never seen before. Behind the image of the successful businessman was someone who had always wanted to create a home, not just own impressive places. As the weeks passed, Nathan and I began having conversations we had avoided for years. We talked about the night we met, the misunderstandings that followed, and the fears that influenced our choices. Some conversations were difficult, but they were honest. I finally admitted that I had been afraid he would see the children as a responsibility instead of a blessing. Nathan looked at me quietly and said that the greatest regret of his life was not knowing them sooner. He did not blame me. He understood why I made the decisions I did. For the first time, the weight I carried for years started to feel lighter. However, rebuilding a family was not only about healing old memories. It was also about creating new ones. Nathan invited us to visit his office in the city so the twins could see where he worked. At first, I worried they would feel overwhelmed by the large building and unfamiliar environment. Instead, they were fascinated by everything around them. They asked questions, explored the bright rooms, and proudly told everyone that Nathan was their father. Hearing those words made him pause. It was a simple sentence from a child, but it carried years of longing and hope. On the drive back to Havenwood, I looked at Nathan sitting beside the twins, listening to their excited conversations. I realized that family was not built in one perfect moment. It was created through countless small choices made every day. And slowly, we were choosing each other again. Winter arrived quietly in Havenwood, covering the streets with a soft layer of snow and turning the bakery into an even warmer place for everyone who entered. The twins loved watching snowflakes fall through the front window while they waited for Nathan to arrive every morning. What surprised me most was how natural everything had become. The person who once felt like a distant memory had slowly become part of our daily life. Nathan knew which stories the twins wanted to hear before bedtime, which pastries they preferred after school, and which little worries they kept hidden until someone asked the right question. He was learning the details that only someone who truly cared would notice. I was learning something too. I was learning that trust did not always return through dramatic promises. Sometimes it returned through quiet mornings, shared meals, and someone choosing to stay even when things were not easy. Nathan still carried the responsibilities of running his company, but he changed the way he balanced his work and personal life. He no longer allowed endless meetings to take away every important moment. He started leaving his office earlier, making time for dinner, helping with homework, and listening to the twins describe their day. The children never cared about his reputation or wealth. They cared that he remembered their favorite stories and celebrated their smallest achievements. One evening, while we decorated the bakery for the holiday season, Nathan found an old box of photographs that I had stored away. Inside were pictures of the twins as babies, their first steps, their first birthday, and countless memories from the years when I raised them alone. I expected him to feel sadness seeing the moments he missed, but instead he looked at every picture carefully and smiled. He told me that those memories showed him how much love had always surrounded them. He did not want to replace the past. He wanted to become part of the next chapters. That night, after the twins went to sleep, Nathan and I sat in the quiet bakery surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and fresh bread. For the first time, we talked about the future without fear. We discussed what it would mean to truly become a family again. I admitted that a part of me was still afraid of losing this new happiness. Nathan understood because he carried his own fears. He had spent years believing that success meant standing alone at the top, only to discover that the most valuable things in life were the connections he almost lost. He reached across the table and told me that he did not want a perfect story. He wanted a real one. Story where people made mistakes, learned from them, and continued choosing each other. Looking around the bakery, I saw the life I had built and the future that was slowly forming. The journey had not erased the difficult years behind us, but it had changed the meaning of them. Those years proved that love could survive distance, misunderstandings, and time. And as snow continued falling outside our little bakery in Havenwood, I realized that our family was no longer waiting for a beginning. We were already living in one. Spring returned to Havenwood with gentle rain, fresh flowers, and the familiar sound of people walking through the town streets again. The bakery became brighter each morning as sunlight entered through the front windows, touching the wooden tables and the shelves filled with handmade pastries. Life had changed in ways I never imagined. The small moments that once felt ordinary now carried a deeper meaning. Nathan was no longer just a visitor. He had become someone the twins looked for when they woke up, someone they trusted, someone they proudly introduced to their friends. Watching that bond grow was both beautiful and emotional because I knew how much time had been lost. But I also knew that every day they shared now was a chance to create something new. Nathan continued to show that he was not trying to simply enter our lives. He was trying to understand them. He asked questions about the years he missed, not to change the past, but to appreciate every part of the journey that brought us here. He listened to stories about the twins learning to walk, their first words, their favorite childhood memories, and all the little moments that shaped their personalities. Sometimes I caught him quietly looking at old pictures, not with regret, but with gratitude that he had finally found his way back. As the weather became warmer, Nathan suggested a family trip outside Havenwood. It was a simple idea, just a weekend near a quiet lake a few hours away, but for us it felt meaningful. The twins were excited from the moment they heard about it. They packed their bags days in advance, carefully choosing their favorite books, toys, and drawings to bring along. During the trip, I watched Nathan experience something completely different from his usual world. There were no business meetings, no formal events, and no expectations from people who only knew his public image. There was only a family enjoying time together. He laughed when the twins told funny stories, helped prepare meals, and joined them in exploring the peaceful surroundings. The happiness on his face was something I had never seen before. It reminded me that even people who appear to have everything can still be searching for something important. One evening, while we sat outside watching the sunset, Nathan thanked me for giving him the opportunity to know them. I told him that I did not do it for him. I did it because the twins deserved to know the person who had always been part of their story. Nathan nodded and said he understood. He knew that being a parent was not about claiming a place. It was about earning one through patience, love, and presence. That conversation stayed with me. For so long, I believed our past would always separate us. I thought the years apart created a distance that could never disappear. But I slowly realized that healing was not about pretending those years never happened. Healing was about accepting them and moving forward together. When we returned to Havenwood, the bakery felt different even though nothing had changed. The same tables stood by the windows. The same shelves held our pastries. The same streets surrounded our home. But inside, everything felt warmer. We were no longer three people protecting ourselves from the world. We were a family learning how to stand together. And for the first time in years, I stopped wondering what we had lost. I started looking forward to everything we could still build. The months passed, and our life in Havenwood settled into a peaceful routine that once felt impossible to imagine. The bakery continued to be the heart of our days, filled with the smell of fresh bread, warm conversations, and the sound of laughter from people who had become more than customers. They had watched our family change slowly, and many of them welcomed Nathan as if he had always belonged there. For me, that acceptance meant more than I could explain. I had spent so many years believing that my happiness depended only on my ability to protect the twins and keep our small world safe. Now I was learning that allowing others to share that world did not make it weaker. It made it stronger. Nathan became part of the everyday moments that mattered most. He was there for school projects, weekend breakfasts, and evenings when the twins wanted to show him something they had created. He never treated those moments as interruptions from his busy life. He treated them as the most important parts of his day. The twins noticed everything. They noticed how he remembered their favorite snacks, how he kept their drawings carefully stored in his office, and how he always made time to listen when they had something to say. Their trust grew naturally because they felt his sincerity. One afternoon, Nathan received an invitation to attend a major company celebration in the city. It was an event where many important people would gather, and he asked if we wanted to come with him. At first, I hesitated. The world Nathan came from was completely different from our quiet town. I worried that the attention would make the twins uncomfortable or that people would only see us as a story connected to his success. Nathan understood my concern. He told me that he did not want to hide the family he had found. He wanted the people in his life to know what truly mattered to him. The night of the event, I watched Nathan introduce us with a confidence I had never seen before. He did not speak about achievements, awards, or business victories. He spoke about the people who changed his understanding of what happiness meant. The twins stood beside him proudly, holding his hands as they looked around the room filled with unfamiliar faces. What surprised me was how comfortable they became. Their kindness and honesty reached people in a way that wealth and status never could. Many guests who had only known Nathan as a serious businessman saw another side of him that evening. They saw a father, a partner, and someone who had discovered a different purpose in life. On the way home, the twins fell asleep quietly in the back seat after an exciting night. Nathan and I sat together in silence, watching the city lights disappear behind us as we returned to Havenwood. He told me that years ago, he thought building a successful future meant always moving forward and never looking back. But now he understood that sometimes the most important part of life was returning to the people who made you feel complete. I looked out at the road ahead and felt a sense of peace I had not known for a long time. Our story was not perfect. We had missed years, faced uncertainty, and carried fears that took time to overcome. But we had also found something rare. We had found the courage to begin again. And as our little family continued forward, I knew the best chapters were not behind us. They were still waiting to be written. Years later, when I looked back at the path we had traveled, I realized that the greatest changes in life rarely happen in a single moment. They happen quietly, through countless ordinary days that slowly transform into something unforgettable. Havenwood remained the same peaceful town with its familiar streets, friendly neighbors, and the little bakery that had once been my shelter from the world. But inside that bakery, everything had changed. It was no longer just the place where I worked to provide for my children. It had become the place where our family grew stronger, where memories were created, and where people gathered to share pieces of their lives with us. The twins were older now, full of curiosity, confidence, and kindness. They carried pieces of both of us not only in their appearance, but in the way they cared about others. Nathan often said that watching them grow was the greatest privilege of his life. He never forgot the years he missed, but he also never allowed regret to stop him from appreciating the present. He became the father he always wanted to be, not through grand gestures, but through everyday choices. He showed up. He listened. He cared. Those simple actions became the foundation of everything we built together. Nathan's company continued to grow, but his priorities had completely changed. He still traveled for important meetings and handled major responsibilities, but he always found his way back home. No matter how busy his schedule became, he protected the moments that mattered. Family dinners, school celebrations, quiet evenings at the bakery, and weekend walks through Havenwood were no longer things he had to make time for. They were the reasons he made time. I also changed during those years. I stopped seeing myself only as someone who had survived difficult times. I began seeing myself as someone who had created something beautiful from those experiences. The fears that once controlled my decisions slowly became memories instead of barriers. I learned that accepting love again did not erase the strength I built while standing alone. It simply allowed me to share that strength with someone else. One evening, after closing the bakery, Nathan and I sat near the window where we had spent so many important conversations. Outside, the town was quiet, and the warm lights from nearby homes reflected against the glass. Nathan told me that when he first met me, he thought success meant having complete control over every part of life. But after everything we experienced, he understood that the most valuable things could not be measured by money, reputation, or achievements. They were found in moments like these. A family gathered together, a home filled with laughter, a future built with patience and understanding. I looked around at the life we created and thought about the person I was years ago, afraid of what tomorrow might bring. I wished I could tell that person that the difficult seasons would not last forever. I would tell myself that sometimes life takes unexpected paths, but those paths can lead somewhere meaningful. Our story was never about forgetting the past. It was about learning from it and choosing hope again. The bakery, the town, the children, and the love we rebuilt all became reminders that second chances are not about returning to where you started. They are about discovering where you truly belong. And as another morning arrived in Havenwood, with fresh bread in the oven and familiar laughter filling the room, I knew that this was the life I had always been searching for.